Well, it is my tremendous honor this morning to welcome Dr. Norris Williams from Dutchman Creek Middle School and his family have been with us this morning. Last month, I approached him and said, hey, we're doing this series, Walking Through Family Ministry. I'm trying to do a really in-depth look at it from not just a ministerial point of view, but just a people point of view, and he has a tremendously unique perspective, being an educator, an administrator, and now a dad of a middle schooler. If you don't know Dr. Williams, then I don't know where you're living. Obviously not here, because he has a tremendous reputation here, being a great man, a great teacher, and I am now a parent of a middle schooler, and Savannah Grace goes to Dutchman Creek. And so just briefly, let these folks know your journey to where you are today. What led you to be specifically involved with middle school?
Excellent. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to see each of you. I started at South Carolina State University as an elementary education major, and most of my work was with first grade students and eighth grade students, and there were a lot of similarities between the two groups. After graduating in December from South Carolina State, I was able to obtain a job at a middle school in Orangeburg, and I was the fifth teacher that the students had that year. The other four just decided it probably wasn't the best thing for them at various points between August and December. And so when I came in January, the students were looking at me and saying, okay, how long are you going to be here? And I said, well, guys, I'm a new grad. I have these things now called bills. Because I'm an adult, and so I'm going to be here because I need you, and it sounds like you need me as well, so we worked together, had an amazing year, and for the remainder of that year I stayed in Orangeburg, and then was fortunate to locate to Rock Hill. In 2000, Winthrop University had one of the premier degree programs for middle level education, teaching individuals specifically how do you work with middle schools. It was one of the only colleges in the Southeast who would do that, or who did that at the time. And so I enrolled in the program, I was accepted, and was fortunate enough to start teaching at Saluda Trail Middle School as an eighth grade math and science teacher. Became an assistant principal at Saluda Trail, and then was fortunate and blessed enough to open Dutchman Creek, Rock Hill's fifth middle school, in 2008. So 15 years into education now, all have been in middle school for me.
That's awesome. As a matter of fact, our worship leader, Brogan, was one of your first classes.
Yes.
And he's going to hate me again for saying this, but Brogan has a new album on iTunes, and you can buy it. And the proceeds are going to a great charity. So you should get on and just search Brogan Gaskell on iTunes and download the album. And I know Dr. Williams is incredibly proud to see one of his former students.
Definitely. It's great seeing him leading praise and worship. That's awesome. And you have current students who are serving in our church, and it's just
it's awesome to see that. So what I really wanted to ask is, you have a unique perspective on, as an educator, as an administrator on middle school, and you have made a lot of changes as you became the principal because of this phase of middle school and the unique challenges that they face and the needs those students have. Talk to us a little bit about what you saw and what you've done to create an atmosphere that's specifically designed with middle school students and people working with middle schoolers.
Excellent. Okay. Well, many of parents who went to Dutchman Creek, or if you've gone through any middle school and Rock Hill schools, you will remember that meeting in around February or March. You come in and with all the other new parents that are going to be sixth grade parents and sixth grade students. And I remember asking parents to raise their right hand and say, I promise, I will remember this is just a phase. And so I was like, I'm glad to see this finally caught on.
Yes, you're an innovator.
Yeah. But it is that. It is a phase, and it's such a crucial and important phase. And so as an instructional leader, one of the things that we embraced was having educators who understand the phase, individuals who are willing to make those necessary adjustments with students, because it is such a crucial time. We have to have the right individuals. I have to have the trust of the parents and the trust of the students so that they realize that my child is going to be safe and cared for and loved, and they're going to learn while they're at school. And so I seek out individuals who have that middle school mindset, that middle school training. All of our teachers at Dutchman Creek and throughout the Rock Hill School District are middle school trained, even though, and some of our teachers are trained from kindergarten through 12th grade.
Wow. So
they have a multitude of different approaches that they use with our students. But that was important to me, to have individuals who could network with the students, who could understand those phases. When they like you on Monday and Wednesday, they may not like you on Tuesday and Thursday. They're a little sassy sometimes, but they still need your support. They are growing into adults, but they're not quite there yet. Yeah. So all those are important for me in embracing that with the faculty and with the volunteers that we have at our school.
And you shared that while they may be a great educator, if they're not a great educator for middle school students, that you even drill down a little more specific with who you try to get on your team.
Yes, I recruit. I will make no bones about it. I always look for amazing teachers, amazing students, amazing parents, and I want them to be a part of our school community. And so we've had wonderful teachers in the past who could teach, like, for instance, they could teach math. It was amazing. Great math teachers, but they couldn't teach math to a 12-year-old. Yeah. They couldn't teach math to that kid that just didn't get it the first time or the second time. And it's important for me to have individuals on staff who realize that a part of the phase is that all kids don't get it the same time, the same way. You may need to do things very different, in a very different manner, so that all of your students can obtain success. Yeah. And so in doing that, we've had some tough conversations with individuals and saying, hey, you're a fantastic educator. I think you're going to do an amazing job. This is not the school for you. I need someone who can embrace all of the attitudes and the adjustments that our students are making. I need someone who can help that kid that gets it the first time and they're ready to try something far different from maybe other kids in the class. And I also need someone who is going to be able to work with my students when they don't get it the first time. And most importantly, I need to make sure that I have individuals who care. Yeah. Because that is a huge part of this phase, is that the students realize that you actually care for them. And once they realize that, then you can pretty much get whatever you want out of them. At least from the school standpoint. It may be a little different at home.
Maybe, a little, slightly. Well, speaking of at home, parents, as now a middle school parent myself, and now you are as well, I think there's a belief or a tendency for us to see what's going on in their lives, and everything's changing. That little angel, your little buddy, no longer has that quick connection, and so there's a tendency that maybe parents think they've got to back off and give them their space. And what would you say to the parents that are buying into that kind of an idea?
It is a huge myth that the students don't need their parents as much in middle school. I would say that they need more, because their minds, their bodies are through a phase right now that they've never gone through. Yeah. Statistically, middle schoolers have more stuff than they will ever have at any other point in their life. They have more items than they ever had in elementary school, and they have to keep up with more things than they probably will even in college.
Yeah.
So it's a crucial time where they need parents and need to provide that balance and that stability for them more so now than maybe in the past. That stability sometimes has to be provided from a distance, because it's not always cool to hang out with you, especially if my friends are around. Yeah, So if you visit at school and you want to eat lunch, like sometimes they really, really want you to eat lunch with them, but not necessarily while all their friends are around. So you may have to eat lunch in the cafeteria, the same cafeteria, just across on the other side, so that you're not with them and their friends, but that they can see you. It's amazing. On the first day of school, we have this really cool event where our parents can come to school with their kids. And when we mentioned that in February and March of that year leading up to 6th grade, all the kids are like, no, I don't want you there. I'm good. I'll be fine. And I'll tell parents, don't worry about that. The closer you get to that day, the more questions you may have asked to you in reference to, okay, you can be there for 10 minutes, or you can be there for an hour. And then we have a number of students who their parents end up staying until that kid feels comfortable. And sometimes that's all day.
Yeah.
For other parents, it means 15 minutes after, in the morning. So, but they need to know that they can come to you and say, hey, I changed my mind. Where I thought I didn't need your help, I really do need your help.
Yeah. Well, those friendships start to get so different in middle school. Elementary, we talked last week about how best friends become best friends, but we see something different that happens with middle school friendships. How have you observed that from a good influence and possibly a negative influence in a child's life, those friendships developing?
From the good influence, I think that middle school times or those phases, that's the part of the phase where you find students that are like you, have like interests, whether it's style or music or whatever it is. You find students that have those same interests. Sports, we see a lot of students connect through various things, and it's because they have those in common. We also see students have to, for the first time in their lives, many of them have to make decisions as to whether or not my friends' choices, can I support them? Can I go along with them? Or do I need to tell an adult because it's not what I've never been exposed to this before, and I need to tell an adult to make sure I'm making the right decision. So for those individuals who find students like themselves, I think that it's very cool, it's very important. I always tell students, though, interact with students who don't look like or like the same things as you, and get to know more people. However, if in doing that, you find individuals that are making choices that are not what you value or your family values, then you need to make the decision and be able to make the decision to make the adjustment away from a friend and let someone else know who can provide assistance.
That's great. Well, as you've become, you spent these years in middle school education, and now you have a young man who is a middle schooler in your home. How have you seen the things that you believed and developed as an educator, as an instructor, either confirmed or some things you're like, maybe we need to adjust that as you've seen your own child become a middle schooler?
I think that one of the things that helped me the most is, first of all, being married. Getting married.
It helps.
It helps. It helped me learn how to communicate better. And then once we had children, it helped me become a better educator, because the philosophy that I have as a principal and that I developed when I became a principal 8 years ago was that I want individuals who I would have teach my child.
Yeah.
And so now I can look throughout my school and I can say, honestly, my son, I would feel comfortable with my son going to any of these classrooms, because I know that the individuals there are going to provide the quality of education that he's in need of. And so it helped me as a leader when I can tell parents, if there is a concern, I'm listening to them and I'm making the necessary adjustments. But when I can talk to parents and talk to students and say, I won't have anyone in front of your child that I wouldn't have in front of my child, it helps make a huge connection with us as a school family. And that's what we are. We're a school family. Yeah. My parents know that they can call me with anything that is important to them or their child. And that is various levels. For some, it's, hey, did I hear you say we could wear jeans on Friday? to, hey, my child is having a concern with the teacher.
Yeah.
So then they know that level of communication is there. It's very efficient. It's very effective. And I think that helps build our family as a school.
Well, what advice would you give to those parents who are maybe navigating those waters for the first time, or maybe they're in those waters and it is a lot rougher than they expected? What advice would you give to middle school parents?
Communication is definitely the key. I would say listen to your students. They tell us a lot, sometimes without saying words. And so when you ask your students about their day, don't limit their options to a yes or a no or a one-word response. Get some information, because truthfully, guys, at this phase and the phases after middle school, the educators are spending just as much or more time with your children as you are, especially when it comes to active communication. So listen to them, probe a little bit, ask some questions, get to know their friends and what their interests are. Sometimes students, it may seem like they're invading your life, but you have to keep in mind the scope of a teenager is very limited. It's more segmented day by day, as opposed to the scope of parents and adults is more broad and visionary, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. So listen to them to make sure that their day-to-day interactions are going to allow them to be able to do the things that you envision for them 5, 10, 20 years down the road. And talk to them. It amazes me the things that I learn. I'm at the same school with my son all day, and it amazes me the things that we're able to talk about that sometimes I know all the details about, and other times I'm like, really? That happened? So talk with them and get their input, get their advice. They offer so much to us, and it's just very helpful.
That's great. And for volunteers or leaders, we're a church that believes tremendously in small groups and having someone partner along with those parents of students at every age. But what advice would you give to those volunteers or those small group leaders who are working specifically with middle school students?
I would say patience is a virtue. Most times, particularly here in the South, when individuals realize that I work with middle schools, they'll say, "Oh, bless your heart." and I think that's their way of saying that working with this age group, it really is not for everyone. Everyone does not understand the ins and outs and the ups and downs of a middle schooler. I love it. I have 964 kids at our school, and sometimes that may mean I get 964 attitude adjustments or ways to say hello or goodbye, all those things that make a true middle schooler, and that's so important to me, that you can recognize that. And so for individuals who volunteer, recognize the level of patience that you have to have, because some of the things that you encounter may not be cool for you to hear, or you wouldn't say it that way, but in the way that they demonstrate their affection, their knowledge about a subject is very age appropriate.
Yeah.
And I think that as volunteers, as worship leaders, as individuals in a school, if we were to think back just a few decades, we'd probably see a lot of similarities between how we were as teenagers and middle schoolers and the middle schoolers today.
Yeah.
We did the same types of things. We had the same types of feelings about adults and about other students. We did those same types of things. It's just a little harder to recognize when you're an adult as opposed to being 12.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for being here
Thank
today.
you.
We're going to pray for not only Dr. Williams and his family and his staff and faculty, but the educators across our area. We are truly blessed. What Chris said was right. We're truly blessed. And especially for those of you who do homeschool you're playing a lot of different hats on a daily basis. And so we want to pray for you, for these educators that you represent and these families. God, thank you so much for today. Thank you for the man that you've made in Dr. Williams, for his encouragement, for the way he pursues you in faith. Thank you so much that he surrendered his life to you. I thank you for his family, for their willingness to be here with us today. I pray, Lord, that you would use him, not only in the lives of middle school students, but in the lives of middle school families, that you would do something through all of this time they spend with these kids to make their lives better, to make them see the truth of who you are and what you have planned for their lives. Lord, we pray for all of the teachers, all of the faculty and staff that are represented in and around our area for those moms and dads who are homeschool parents, who are playing educator and mom and dad. Pray, Lord, that you would give them the patience, that you would give them the ability to listen, that you would give them wisdom and discernment as they raise these young men and young women. Lord, thank you for this place. Thank you for this time that you've given us the courage to step into these waters and talk about this unique phase. Thank you for middle schoolers, Lord. We pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Will you guys thank the Williams for me, please? Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, I promise I'm not going to now preach for 30 minutes. We're going to wrap it up pretty quick. But I did want to kind of lighten the mood for you because you might have a hard time remembering what middle school is like Dr. Williams was saying. I, however, do not. It is seared into my memory like a cat. What are those things? The cattle brand. So I thought, you know what? We all need to enjoy this misery. So I went back and found my yearbooks. Yeah, don't get ahead of me. So, remember, this is late 80s, early 90s, and this is what 6th grade Philip looked like right there. Please note the mullet, the feathered hair on top, and the turtleneck, which we all wore and don't deny it. Not too bad, though. You know, at my middle school was 5th grade through 8th grade. In my 5th grade picture, I'm not showing you, I look like a baby. I mean, I look like a deer in headlights in that picture, honestly. But 7th grade got a little worse. Still mullet. Too long, by the way. Feathered hair. And please note the vest and bola tie. I will go ahead and give a disclaimer that I was not making my own fashion choices at this time. But I wore that thing like it was nobody's business. But then we get into the awkwardness of 8th grade. And again, there you go. There's 8th grade Philip. Beardless still. As a matter of fact, I didn't have a beard until college. But this was right before acne took over my life. And so this was like the last vintage look at cute Philip, and then I just went insane. And so I'm not going to show you my high school pictures because they're painful for all of us. But that was what middle school was like for us. And we have to remember middle school, it's a chaotic stage. It's a very difficult phase because it's the least consistent phase that we encounter. There is nothing less consistent than the middle school years. We have to remember that as we speak with students, as we work with students, as we parent students, that this is just a challenging phase. As a matter of fact, if you think about middle school students, and depending on what kind of middle school student you've been around, they could be kids that still love stuffed animals or kids that hate them and just are on their cell phone all the time. I mean, that's a huge range of personality. Everything changes in this middle school phase. As a matter of fact, they're also the most deceitful phase. They are a bunch of liars. And that sweet little angel, that little buddy of yours is going to look you in the eye and lie their behinds off. And you're just going to stand there. You're going to hell. I have failed at life. My child is spending eternity separated from God forever. You lying little thing. But they will. That's just what's going to happen. They're learning these things. They're figuring all this stuff out. And here's something else that happens in this middle school phase is that positional leadership and relational leadership flip-flop. Positional leadership, I'm speaking of parents, I'm speaking of teachers, coaches, all those kind of people in their lives where they have this kind of built-in respect and fear for them, and they place a lot of importance in what they say and what they believe they should be doing. Well, in this middle school phase, there's a flip-flop. Now friends count a whole lot more than they used to. They listen to their friends, if not as much, possibly even more than what we're telling them. And that's a critical thing to recognize as a parent, as a leader in a middle school student's life, that this is happening and they're starting to make decisions on who they're listening to and why they're listening to them. They think like engineers. Middle school students think like engineers. We talked about preschool students. They think like artists. They learn like artists. Elementary school students, they think like scientists, repeated actions. When it comes to middle school students, they think like engineers. They want to personalize their beliefs. And the way they do that is by connecting different pieces of information to form their own belief, to form their own understanding of a subject, of an idea, of just what's going on in their life. And so as we look into the life of a middle school student, we got to remember that they're thinking that way. They're thinking like engineers. That's why puzzles are so great, not just like puzzles, but like think about MASH books. Do you guys remember MASH books where you told you know who you're going to live with and who you're going to date and what kind of house you're going to live in, or maybe the origami little thing that told your future, okay? Middle schoolers are all over that because they're processing information. They're trying to piece these pieces of information together to personalize what they think is going to happen in life. And it's not something we need to resist, it's something we need to embrace and understand as we work with these middle school students. And because this phase is the least consistent, as I went to God's Word and thought about what is something we can hold on to, what is something we can pray over these students, what is something we can continually put before their eyes and so that it sinks into their heart. Philippians 1:6 came to mind. And if you have a Bible, I'd love for you to turn there. If you're a parent of a middle schooler, or you may one day have a middle schooler, you're a grandparent of a middle schooler, you need to underline, highlight, star, blow this up, put it on the door frames of your home, and speak this into the life of a middle school student. This is what Philippians 1:6 says. And I'm sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. Because there's nothing more scary to a student than the unknown or something not being completed. Like they can't figure it out and it just frustrates them tremendously. The unknown about a friendship and whether they're in good, if they're doing well or doing not. The unknown whether a boy likes you or whether a girl likes you, and what do I do? Do I call? Do I not call? Do I text? Do I get on social media? All these things are terrifying, and they need to be reminded that you're still in process and that you serve a God who has promised to finish his work in you. I think that's critical for these students. Because as we talked about these phases, preschool, we talked about preschoolers being motivated by safety, and so everything that they're looking for, everything they're experiencing, they're trying to figure out, am I safe? And elementary students, they're motivated by fun. Is it fun? How can we have fun? How can we make this more fun? Well, for middle school students, they're motivated by acceptance. And you know what? That doesn't ever wear off, really. Because as adults, we're still afraid of being rejected. Even the most macho guy still wants to be part of the group at work, still wants to be part of the group with his clubs or organizations or hobbies. We all want to be accepted. And never is that felt more intensely than in the life of a middle school student. Everything around them is screaming, you don't belong. And that's the one need they are trying to fill. I want to be accepted. I don't want to have to change who I am, but I will change it if you'll accept me. That's why there's so much, that's why your little angel might show up in, black clothes and black fingernail polish, because if that's who's going to accept them, that's what they're going to do. You have to remember these things as you're working with these kids. And then the one-word job description we talked about with preschool students, that one-word job description was embrace. We need to embrace their physical needs to establish trust. With elementary school students, that one-word job description became engage, because we need to be engaged in their interests so we can develop that relationship of trust. Well, with middle school students, our one-word job description is affirm. Because so much is happening in their life, so much is changing that we need to affirm them. We need to support them. And for parents, you're trying to prove your relational commitment to them. Like I said, nothing is less stable in this phase, any phase, than a middle school phase. And so as a parent, you're actually trying to prove to them that you are committed to them relationally. Regardless if you're married or divorced or separated or whatever it might be, there's still a way for you as a parent to prove relational commitment to them. Because again, acceptance is so much more important at home. They need to know that mom, dad, grandparent, aunt, uncle, whoever it is that is their caregiver, loves them and accepts them. For volunteers, for those of us who are working with middle school students, maybe you're a small group leader, or you're involved in their life, you're a teacher or a coach, you're consistent. The consistent adult in their life is important. We talked about with preschoolers, consistent adults are important because the unfamiliar is terrifying. But then with elementary age kids, consistent adults are important because they'll tell a stranger anything. When it comes to a middle school student, a consistent adult in their life is so important because nothing else in their life is consistent. Everything's changing. So they need someone, they need an adult, as well as a parent, consistently pouring into them, checking in with them, speaking belief and love and acceptance into their lives. So as we look at these phases, the sixth grade phase, we like to call it this. It's the who cares phase. Sixth graders pretty much say, who cares, right? It's the phase when there's never enough groceries. Probably get an amen there. Too many hormones. Definitely get an amen there. And a dramatic kid that needs someone to prove who cares. This kid is asking, who do I like? Who do I like? Not just who am I supposed to hang out with, who do I spend time with, but who do I like? And we're trying to gain stability in their lives. As everything changes and everything is inconsistent, we're trying to help them gain stability in their life. The 7th and 8th grade phase inside this group is the phase, yeah, I know phase. It's the phase when nothing you do is cool. Mom, dad, grandparent, sorry. As cool as you think you are or you think you were, as many New Kids on the Block shows as you went to, you are not cool. I'm sorry. Everything is fun in a crowd. Those friendships mean so much. And one smart kid will keep reminding you, yeah, I know. I hear that a lot in my house because my kids are very bright and they do know most of the time. And I don't know what to do with that. But what I want to talk to you about very briefly, and this is more church related, but I think it's important to apply this across the board, is that I grew up in a church, and you might have grown up in a church, and sadly there are still churches that exist that are not safe places for kids to fail. It's not a safe place when they mess up. And I want GCC to be a place that kids, we're not encouraging them to fail, but we're being prepared for them when they fail. You know, I thought that I was supposed to have it all together and that if I ever even looked at a cigarette that I was going to go to hell, that if we drank, and it was nothing, I mean, nothing was more heartbreaking to me because I was this innocent little child that I thought everybody, I think I've said this before, but I remember in 5th grade when middle school started for me, we had this like drug and alcohol awareness class, and I was convinced like, well, nobody's going to smoke at the school when we become 8th graders because we're going to tell everybody not to, and we don't smoke. Man, my middle school was a chimney. And I was heartbroken because I was convinced that everybody was as like good-hearted as I was, that we weren't going to make bad choices. And man, was I wrong. But it's not a safe place. The church is not a safe place. So when you find something out about somebody, what happened in church when somebody's kid got in trouble? Oh, did you hear about what Susie's boy did? I knew it from the start. He was a bad egg, right? The gossip circles just start going. And that's why people don't like church, because they're talking about your kid. And the kid doesn't want to come because you're talking about them. It's not a safe place anymore. So we're determined to change that. We want this to be a place where kids know that when things go awry, when they make a poor choice, it's not that we're just going to say, oh, poor baby, we'll pick you up, you'll do better next time. But we help them understand why it was a wrong choice. We help them navigate how to make a more wise choice in the future. We have done a poor job with teaching the Bible with middle school students, as a matter of fact, because we've edited out the failures, we've edited out all the bad stuff from these biblical characters in these stories. And so we've set up these perfect images of what they think they're supposed to be. For instance, if I say the word Noah, the name Noah, what comes to mind, right? Faith, the Bible, the last 14 weeks in Rock Hill, right? You think of this guy who trusted God in the face of certain insults and all this stuff. But unfortunately, we don't talk enough about how many times he disappointed God and that he was a drunk. How he passed out naked from drinking. We edit that stuff out from the story. How about Moses? Moses, right? Let my people go, right? That whole thing. Prince of Egypt, we love it. But we don't talk about the fact that Moses was a murderer. We don't talk about as much about why he didn't get to go into the promised land. Just a quick little interactive portion of the show, right? Okay, why didn't Moses get to go in the promised land? If you were here first hour, don't answer. Why? Why didn't, Struck the rock, lost his temper, right? That's what you think? It's not it. You go back to the actual story, it's because Moses didn't give God credit for the water that came from the rock. Isn't that I didn't know that. Now, that pastor's talking heresy. We're never coming back here. It's true. We edit the story so that we can understand it. Because you and I, we have a hard time giving God glory for the stuff that goes right in our life. We're quick to go to God when negative stuff's going on, when stuff's getting difficult. But when stuff's going good, we think we just did a good job at work. When our kid makes a wise choice, like, maybe I'm not such a bad parent after all. That's exactly what Moses did. He didn't give God the credit. He didn't give God the glory. How about Samson? Big, strong Samson with the long, beautiful hair. Did you guys know that he was a womanizer and went to prostitutes all the time? That's not in my kid's Bible. There's no picture of that. Thank you, Lord. How about King David? David and Goliath, right? We don't talk about the fact enough that David cheated with another man's wife, got her pregnant, and sent that man to go be killed because he couldn't figure out how to fix the mess. And he was a man known as God, a man after God's own heart. We have taken these characters from the Bible and we have made them look so pristine and perfect. And then we have portrayed ourselves as being pristine and perfect. And so a kid growing up thinks they got to do it all right, and when they don't do it right, like all of us don't do it right, they don't know where to go. And they think that church is the last place they can go when they mess up. That's a shame. GCC will not be a place that people don't know that they can go to be loved and welcomed when they mess up. We need to teach them that failure is a part of spiritual growth. And I'm not saying that we help them like Romans tells us, shall we continue in sin so that grace may abound? God forbid. It's not that we just keep sinning so that God's grace gets bigger and bigger. It's that we help them understand that a part of spiritual growth is failure, and we prepare for it. Help them, hold their hand, lift them up when they don't understand. We need to be more intentional about admitting our own messiness. We don't need to be a church that chases away a kid when they fail, but welcomes them home when they do. You know, I knew many friends of mine who stopped going to church because they made a mistake, and they didn't want to face the judgment. As a matter of fact, there's this horrible habit we have in churches, and I'm speaking generally, not specifically about GCC, that when people come into church late, you know, those people that get there early, they look at them like, you have no respect of people's time, right? Why did you even come? And I've been saying for years that I think we need to treat church service a little more like AA. And when people come in late, we just need to be so thankful that they're there. And let's apply that to sin and grace. So-and-so messed up, so-and-so cheated on their husband, so-and-so made a mistake, so-and-so got arrested. I mean, do you think any guy who gets out of jail on a Saturday is thinking about going to church on Sunday, especially if it was on the Herald Online? Well, I hope they will about GCC. I hope they'll know that we will not allow them to continue in sin, but we are going to love them and lead them to Jesus. And we need to start with our students, with the children. So what's our goal here with middle school students at GCC? We have two goals we want to accomplish. We want them to own their own faith, and we want them to value a faith community. We want them not just to believe in Jesus because I said it. We don't want them just to believe in Jesus because they've heard it so much. We want them to encounter God and surrender their own lives to Jesus, that they're spending time on their own studying His Word, speaking to Him in prayer, that it's their personal journey of faith. But how many of us are modeling it well for them? If your kid, and fingers pointed right at me, if all your kid ever learned about Bible study was from watching you study the Bible, how well would they study the Bible? If we want them to own their own faith, and we've got to do some modeling, folks. We've got to hold their hand. We've got to teach them. It starts with me. And this faith community, I'm so grateful for what we've seen in just a short time that we've been a church, to see our students plugging in, especially middle school students. Because to a preschool student, which is where a lot of our middle school kids serve, to a preschool kid, there's nobody cooler than a middle school kid. I mean, they are heroes to them. And likewise, there's nobody cooler to a middle school kid than a high school kid. And this is what family does. We embrace these natural tendencies in these kids, and we leverage them for the purposes of Jesus. Nobody can speak truth into the life of a middle school kid like a high school kid who loves Jesus. There's a relational currency there that we don't have. That's what we want to accomplish. As the kid goes into high school, we want them to have faith, their own faith, not because mom or dad or pastor or small group leader told them so, but because they encounter Jesus and they embrace Jesus. And that they value their church family because the church family loves them, cares for them, and gives them an opportunity to be a part of the church. I've said this before, I'll say it again, you'll get sick of hearing me. Children and students are not the church of tomorrow, they are the church today. And as a matter of fact, if a student or child gets baptized at our church, they're a member and they have a vote on things like the budget. So if they don't think the student ministry is getting enough money, they can raise a hand and say, why ain't we getting more money? Because you know what? Andy Stanley said that if you want to get a temperature gauge for the success of your church in the future, you just need to look at how well they're doing with student ministry. That'll tell you the future of your church. That's why we ponied up money and are paying Ward this year. That's why he's so important to us. That's why we're asking you to support an every other week student ministry. That's why we're willing to pay $100 to rent this building every time we have student ministry, because it's critical, not just to the life of our church, but more so to the future of these students. And we need you. We need volunteers to step up and pour their lives into them. So these engineers, as they're thinking about things, how can we practically help you work with students? How can we help you practically parent students? You need to remember this with middle school students. They're trying to connect the dots. They're trying to piece together everything that's going on in their lives and connect it some way. You need to expect crisis in their life because puberty, friendships, and you need to be consistent. Parents, you need to follow through with your promises, and you need to follow through with your punishments. There's nothing that teaches a kid that they don't have to do what they need to do like a parent who doesn't follow through on their punishment. Yeah, it's an inconvenience. We were just talking last night with some friends. It's an inconvenience when you give that kid a punishment like taking away a phone or a car or something like that. But when you give it back to him, you're saying, go ahead, do what you want. For volunteers, you need to be consistent in their life. You need to show up. You want to become a hero in a middle school kid's life? Show up at a soccer game or a piano recital. What you do away from here is so much more valuable than what you do in here, because we spend most of our lives out there. And if we're not careful, this is just a phase, and we'll miss it. So men of our church, when we started this church not too long ago, we said we're going to unapologetically disciple men. Men of our church, you need to serve. We need to serve with middle school students, high school students, college students, babies, preschool. Yeah, I said babies. You're okay. You can change a diaper. It's cool. You need to serve on the parking team. You need to serve on the host team. You need to serve. Because right now the church has become more feminine because men are abdicating their responsibility as spiritual leaders. Not because women can't do it. It's because men have gotten scared too. We've gotten lazy. I love you, but my kids need you, because the day is coming soon when dad's an idiot, but you're not. And this is just a phase, 3 short years. If we're not careful, we'll miss it. Let's pray together. Jesus, thank you so much for including us in the lives of these students, these children. Thank you so much for the parents who are pushing so hard to help these kids become well-adjusted adults, as if any of us are. And I pray, Lord, that you give us the courage to take this challenge head on, that this would be a safe place for kids. This would be a challenging place for all of us as we grow deeper in our relationship with you. Thank you for Dr. Williams, for his family, for his staff and faculty, for all the educators, for the homeschool parents. I pray that you give them the wisdom and discernment they need to navigate these waters. Thank you for middle school students, God, the blessing they are to our lives, the chaos that they bring, and the fun that they bring. We love you and praise in your name. Amen.